Have you ever just looked around and felt like the world is stuck? Like we've kind of stopped making any real meaningful progress? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty big theory that says that feeling is not just in your head. It's wild. It all started with a simple question about a trip, but it led to this huge diagnosis of our times, the Great Stagnation. So get this, the entire idea we're about to unpack started with what seems like a totally normal question. Someone asked about taking a cultural exploration cruise, from Singapore to Malaysia. You'd expect an answer about the best sights to see or what food to try, right? Well, that is not at all what happened. Yeah, because the response was anything but a travel tip. Instead, the speaker launched into this massive, sweeping theory that connects our own personal growth, or our lack of it, to all the global conflicts and social tension we see everywhere today. A bit more than your average travel advice, huh? And this right here is the absolute core of the idea. It's called the Great Stagnation. The theory is basically this. As a whole, humanity has fundamentally stopped growing. We've hit a wall, a giant plateau, and the fallout from that is affecting, well, everything. So the theory breaks down our recent history into these three distinct phases. Before the 2000s, it argues that society was clearly in an era of growth and progress. But the new millennium, that was the big turning point, where things started to slow way, way down. And for the last decade or so, we've been in what the theory calls a state of almost total stagnation. And this is so crucial to understanding the whole thing. This stagnation, this feeling of being stuck, is completely unnatural for us. The idea is that we, as human beings, are just meant to constantly grow and push forward. So when that forward momentum grinds to a halt, and we're just sitting idle for too long, deep-seated problems can't help but bubble to the surface. Okay, so if being stagnant is the root cause, what are the symptoms? Well, according to this theory, a lack of progress doesn't just make us feel bored, it actually actively creates conflict. The theory uses this really powerful metaphor here. Think about it. When people are busy building things, creating, progressing, they're focused, they're working together. But when that stops, they become idle. And idle people, the theory goes, start to scratch at each other. This isn't just about being a little annoyed. This scratching is the social friction, the blame games, the constant nitpicking that blows up into real division and conflict. And you can really see the difference between these two states of society side by side. During periods of growth, all our energy flows outward. It's about collaboration, exchange, having a shared goal. But during stagnation, that exact same energy turns inward, and it becomes friction and blame. The whole focus shifts from let's build something new together to let's tear down what you have. And these are not just abstract concepts. The theory points to very real symptoms. You see it when people start blaming successful people for their success, or when powerful groups start pointing fingers at the powerless. The source gives this specific example from South Korea, where there was this huge public backlash against people just for wearing luxury brands. But see, it's not really about envy or the fancy clothes. It's a classic sign of stagnation. When there's no big collective project to work on, people's attention turns to criticizing the tiny details of each other's lives. So if we're all just scratching at each other, why isn't anyone stepping up to point us in a better direction? This leads us to another critical piece of this stagnation puzzle, what's called the leadership vacuum. The argument is that the world is kind of collectively holding its breath, waiting for a new idea, a new direction to pull us forward. But here's the problem. The very people who are meant to give us that vision, our thinkers, our guides, our role models, they're just as stuck as everyone else. They've stopped growing too, so they have nothing new to offer. Okay, but this whole theory isn't just doom and gloom. It actually proposes a solution, and it's probably not what you're thinking. It's not about politics or power in the traditional sense. It's about creating a new kind of role model for a new era. The answer, according to the theory, isn't a politician or a CEO. It's what's called an inspiring leader. Now, this isn't someone who gives orders or makes 5-year plans. It's a person or even a group that becomes so admirable in their own development that they create a new culture just by being. Their way of living becomes the new standard that inspires everyone else to start growing again. And the theory even lays out a path for how to become this kind of leader. It doesn't start with campaigning or shouting the loudest. It starts with deep inner work. First, you have to study the world and really understand humanity. From there, you figure out your own purpose. Then, you consciously work on yourself to become someone who is admirable. It's only from that solid foundation that you can naturally inspire a new way forward for everyone. And ultimately, this is what the proposed solution boils down to. What our stagnant world needs more than anything else right now isn't more power or more money, but just more admirable people. people who are actually worth looking up to and whose example can pull the rest of us forward. And that leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on. If there's any truth to this theory and our whole society is stuck in a rut, what would genuine progress even look like in the 21st century? What is the next great leap for humanity? Definitely something to think about.